I don't have a gag involving Peach to open this up with. She just wouldn't calm down unless she sat in my lap. So hey everyone, it's me, Aaron.
I'm Michelle.
And this is our post-Geekout reaction for Crazy Rich Asians, which again, you did not see, I saw. This thing is huge. I remember I reserved my tickets for this thing, and I was like, yeah, it's a romantic comedy. Romantic comedies are never a big deal. There was like one seat left in my theater, and it was the biggest theater at the AMC 25, which is
It's a good thing I didn't go then, because there wouldn't be a seat for me.
AMC 25 is also the biggest theater in New York. So yeah, this thing is on full display in this city this weekend. And I was pleasantly surprised because, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Peach's butt being in my face. I'm not the biggest fan of romantic comedies because I think a lot of them are just kind of lazy these days. They're just kind of like, they're kind of like horror films where people are like, yeah, as long as we do X, Y, and Z, people will come to see this thing. We don't have to actually try. This is one that actually tried. It really tried, and that is very refreshing, and that is the first thing that I will give it. I do still have some problems with it, and we'll get into that in just a second, but one thing that we'll go ahead and say...
Ooh, Peach, come here. Come here, baby girl.
One thing that I'll say after Peach is done stepping on my nuts, is that, yeah, I'll just go ahead and address this. I'm not the target audience for this film. I'll go ahead and say that right now. However, the audience I was in was the target audience for this film, and this may very well be the most crowd-pleasing movie I have seen all year, because there are entire lines of this movie that I completely missed because my audience was laughing or applauding over the previous line. So yeah, my audience loved this movie, and yeah, this film, it is being aimed at an Asian audience, and I had a huge Asian audience in there, and they absolutely loved this thing, and they were laughing at so many jokes that I didn't understand at all. But that's totally fine. I don't have to understand these jokes if they're not aimed at me. As long as the audience that is aimed at does understand it, and the audience it was aimed at did understand it. Like, there's so many lines in here. Like, there's one moment in which our protagonist says, "I'm so Chinese, I teach economics, and I'm lactose intolerant." And my audience burst out laughing at that. I was like, "Is that a thing? Is that I don't know. I don't want to ask anybody if that's like a thing."
I don't want to seem like the dumb white guy. Like,
I've been the dumb white guy in every movie I've ever been to, but this is the one where I'm actually concerned about that. There's another moment where someone says, "Isn't red a lucky color?" And another character says, "Yeah, if you're an envelope." My audience burst out laughing at that. And I was just like, brilliant, brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. So yeah, I was just like, okay, there's some stuff in here I'm just not gonna get, but that's totally fine as long as the audience that is going to get it enjoys it. And the audience, and my audience, got the jokes, and they loved it. So there's gonna be one of those weird movies where I kind of give like, there's gonna be one of those weird movies where I kind of give like 2 scores to it, because I'm going to give what my feelings are towards it, just how I felt towards the movie, but I'm also gonna say like, but you know what, based on my audience's reaction, what I think they would probably all give this film. Alright, but basically what this movie is about, it's this woman, Rachel Chu, who she is an economics professor at NYU, and she has been dating this guy, Nick Young. And they've just kind of been hanging out in New York, just being a couple for a year now, and Nick Young has to go to be the best man at his friend's wedding back in Singapore, so he decides, you know what, I'm going to have you come and finally meet my family. Turns out, his family is like the richest family in all of Asia. Like, they are just massive tycoons. They apparently own like all of Singapore. Like, they are they are the landlords of the entire, Peach, what are you doing? They are landlords of all of Singapore. That's basically how someone sums it up at one point. And this basically very quickly became clear to me, this is an old school Hollywood film. This isn't like a regular romantic comedy. This is old school, like Cary Grant style Hollywood stuff. And I'm not just saying that because the guy who plays Nick Young, Henry Golding, that dude is basically just Cary Grant. He is 100% just Cary Grant, like in 2018. He is insanely charming. You instantly see, oh, this is why she fell in love with this guy. But Rachel Chu, played by Constance Wu, I believe was her name. Yes, by Constance Wu. She's incredibly charming too, and anytime that those two are on screen together, they have amazing chemistry. They are great together. But yeah, like I said, it reminds me of old school Hollywood because it's a very kind of wacky situation that revolves around these two getting closer together, because that's basically just what early love stories were in Hollywood. And it totally has that tone, not just because it's such a simple concept with, you know, a love story, but with one big twist thrown in there, but also just the showmanship behind this. The showmanship in everything is huge. Like, everything is giant. Everything is extravagant here. And a lot of that has to do with the way that this film is shot. This film is shot gorgeously. It makes you want to go to every single one of these locations. Like, every single time that they go to some place, you're like, I want to be there. I want to be partying at this place as well. Like, there was a moment in which they were just at, like, some food vendors. They're just walking around and just picking up food from different people at different stands. And I was like, everything looks delicious at this place. I would love to go and eat any of this stuff.
It's just like a promotional video for
it's the greatest, like, this is the greatest tourism video for Singapore you will ever see. So, yeah, every single moment in here, like, they go to the big rehearsal dinner. It's at this giant mansion, and it looks amazing there. There's a moment where they're walking around the kitchen of there, and you just watch people preparing food. It looks gorgeous. I would love to eat any of this stuff. Everything in this movie. There are moments where they go just like deserted islands just to hang out, and they look amazing. Every single frame of this movie just has like big glitz and glamour showmanship to it. That's one of the reasons I say that it feels like old school Hollywood. It's so weird to me that, not to bring up a dead horse on this one, but a couple of years ago when we reviewed, God, what was that film? Ryan Gosling tries to save jazz.
Oh yeah.
Fuck, I don't even remember what it was called.
La La Land?
That was it, yeah.
Yeah.
we thought La La Land was okay. I thought it was fine, but so many people were like, no, it is a love letter to classic Hollywood. I was like, it's an imitation of classic Hollywood, sure.
Yeah, it's like...
This feels like classic Hollywood is what this film does. Because La La Land, it felt like someone just going, what were the things in the previous things? We're gonna try and do that. This felt like they were not trying to be that. It felt like they were just naturally putting a movie together.
Yeah, also like,
and it just felt like a new version of those
like
classic
just La La
Hollywood
Land
films.
felt like an ode to Hollywood in like the first 15 minutes.
Yes.
Then it just felt like your typical
That's the other thing about
romantic comedy.
Yeah, that was the other thing about La La Land. It was like, wow, aren't these musical numbers great? Yeah, why did they stop them halfway through the movie? This movie, it is not a musical, but it constantly has that feeling like if anybody just stopped and started singing in here, you would buy it. You'd be like, no, everything was set up just fine. I'm totally on board with this. But yeah, so looks great. The characters are fantastic in here. Not just Rachel and, God, I forgot the other guy's name already, Nick Young. I remembered it before it popped up on my phone, everyone. Not just those two. They're great together. They're wonderfully acted, very charismatic people. But there are so many side characters in here because he's got a big family and he's got friends and they're meeting all these other people, and she's got a friend who she went to college with and she lives over in Singapore, and it's kind of weird that she's also insanely wealthy as well. It was like, is everybody on this island just a millionaire? Is everybody just incredibly wealthy? Like, how does that work out?
Well, the title is Crazy Rich Asians. So.
Yeah, I was like, how literal is that? Is like everyone in here insanely wealthy? Because, yeah, it was so odd to me that, like, her best friend from college, who also just happens to live in this area, is also insanely wealthy. It was like, that's kind of a weird coincidence. All right, whatever. But, yeah, everyone is this huge, dynamic personality. And there's a moment in which this opens up with them talking about his family members, and he's giving her the description of each of them, and it will cut to them, and one of them is, like, a movie director, but he's a movie director. He just is a rich guy who wants to make movies, and he's making awful things, and he's in a relationship with the star, and she's an awful actress. And there's a moment in which he goes up, like after they cut, and they're just making out like crazy. And one of the other two like co-directors just leans over, she's awful. She's also banging the guy who's funding the movie. You want to tell him she's awful? All right, let's move on to the next scene. And I keep saying this feels like old school Hollywood. That was Singing in the Rain. For anybody who's seen Singing in the Rain, a huge part of that is, oh, there's an actress who is freaking awful in there, but they keep having to use her in the movie. that one little moment in there, I was like, man, this totally feels like an homage to that. But it doesn't feel like they stopped the whole movie to go, see what we're paying homage to here? It's like, no, they just kept going. But then there's another brother who, he's another like big wealthy guy, and he has a very dysfunctional, like he and his wife are constantly arguing, but they're constantly putting on like a good face for the public. And they're taking a photo for a magazine, and then as soon as it's over, it's like, I told you to wear that dress, go to hell, and like just yelling at each other. It's like, oh, I love this, I want to keep following these characters, they're so good. But he's also got a sister, and the sister's the only one who he actually kind of kept in touch with, because he kind of like dropped off from the rest of the family. But even though he dropped off from the rest of the family, he's like the only good son in there, because I just told you about the other two. But he still keeps in touch with his sister, and she is like super into charity. She's got this huge heart. She also goes on spending sprees at all times. She goes on giant shopping sprees. But her husband was in the military, and he didn't come from wealth, so he constantly kind of feels like he's not as good as the rest of them, and she's constantly trying to like convince him, no, it's okay, you're all here. And they have this big B-plot. And man, this movie did get me invested, because when the B-plot comes about, let's just say it has something to do with trouble in their relationship. And when that got revealed, I did legitimately gasp. I did actually go, oh, and that's just a tribute. That just is praise for how well this film is shot, that it got me like that invested in these little moments in here. But here's the problem with this film. The side characters are great, but they keep coming and keep coming. And this was based on a book. And this movie has a problem that a lot of movies based on books have. There's so much stuff in the book, you can't fit it all into the movie. And there's so many times they just gotta race by stuff. And I was loving this film in the beginning. I was legit looking at this like, this might actually make it into my top 10 movies of the year list. Like, this is so refreshing and so charming, and I'm enjoying every character in here, and the jokes are all hitting. And then as the movie went along, it was like watching someone spinning plates, and they just kept adding plates and adding plates, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, can't get to them all. And yeah, that became a huge problem in this film. Because, like I said, there is a B-plot involving the sister and her husband, and there is a moment in which the sister has to like confront Rachel about this. And I was like, wow, this would be a really powerful bonding moment between them, except I don't think they've said anything more than hi to each other before this moment. Kind of hurts this scene. And then there's a whole B-plot in there as well.
You mean like a C-plot?
No, there's like 9 B-plots.
Oh,
they're all in there. Because they all have almost equal time in here. And then there's like another B-plot in here, B-plot 2, in which one of Nick's old girlfriends, who's a lawyer for the family, she doesn't want Rachel getting married to him, and like they're all kind of plotting against her, and they try to like do something to kind of sabotage Rachel, and that's really nasty for a couple seconds, and then that's never really brought up again as a thing, and then that's just kind of done and left there, and it's like, no, it kind of feels like that would keep going, it kind of feels like another plot that just kind of left. But if you watch the trailer, it makes it look like, no, it is Rachel versus his mother. The mother is not okay with her. The mother is not okay with her one good son marrying some commoner, some immigrant from America. Who cares about them? I don't want any part in that. And they speak like twice in this movie. Like the first time they speak, she's just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then the next time they speak, she's like, you will never be good enough for my son. And then like third time, she like drops a massive bomb on them, and it's the big all is lost moment of the movie. And I was like, wow, you've met her like twice before this, and you did this really dickish thing right now? Come on, man, aren't you gonna give me a little bit more than that in here? So yeah, this movie, it constantly tries to move from one thing into the next and have so many characters in here that it doesn't give us enough interactions between these characters, and that's the stuff that should have made this movie. Because the interactions between these characters are great, but when you try and have an interaction that really depends on bigger interactions before that moment, and you didn't have those bigger interactions before this moment here, not as big, not as important. There's a lot of moments like that in this film that suffer. In fact, there was a moment after this devastating thing happened to Rachel in which she is being comforted by Nick, And it was in that moment that I was like, man, these two, they are so good together. They do have such charisma with each other. They are so charming together. Wait, this is like the second time they've been together since getting to Singapore. They split apart after that and have never been seen together up until this moment here. And yeah, it really kind of feels like for a movie that's supposed to be a big love story and romance, wouldn't you want the two main love interests to like stick together way more in this movie? To be with each other way more than that guy seems like a problem in here. I don't know. So yeah, that is when my score started dropping. Is that as the movie went along, the interactions between these characters should have been so much bigger because they need to rely on other interactions before that to build them up. And again, in the book, I'm sure they're there. But you can't put all that stuff in the book. And it really feels like if they had taken certain characters, certain supporting characters out of here, like, yeah, the stuff with the sister and what's going on with her husband, that's really good. And it's acted incredibly well. Everyone is a great actor in this movie. The sister kills it in all of her scenes. Like, she has big emotional moments in here, and she's great. But as much as I hate saying it, that side plot doesn't really go anywhere or mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And I think if you had taken all those scenes out and put in more interactions between Rachel and Nick and between Nick and his mom and the mom and Rachel, that, which is the A story of this, would have been so much bigger. And yeah, that's really what all this comes down to, is that it just tried to do too many things.
Right.
It's still a good time. It's still incredibly charming. I still had a blast with this. But yeah, they just kept introducing way too many characters. And some of the characters in here, I'll admit, as much as I loved 90% of the characters in here, there is one in here who you could have just done completely without. It's her friend from college. She is the one-up girl!
Oh.
Oh, man. Every time that she came on and just started talking like that, I was like, no. Back away from this scene. I'm not going to enjoy part of this. But I will say, even though half of her lines in here made me cringe, because half of them were like, damn girl, you gotta get in there. Come on, you playing chicken with that old lady. You ain't gotta be a chicken. Chickens don't do nothing. No. And I was like, no, stop every part of this. No, this is awful. There's another like half of her lines that I actually did kind of enjoy. Like, she would split like right down the middle, but I mean, half of you cringing at a character still isn't good. Like, 50% is not passing grade.
Yeah.
But I will say the other 50%, most movies, when they give you a character like that, it's 100% cringe. This one, 50% of her was actually pretty good. I'll give her that. Like, there's a moment in which she's getting invited into the party. She's like, no, I couldn't. No, I couldn't. I wouldn't want. Yeah, hell yeah, I'll get in there. It's like, okay, that's kind of nice. And then she goes to her trunk, and she's got a bunch of dresses in there, and they're labeled, like, party, cocktail party, walk of shame. And I was like, that's kind of nice in there. And like I said, this movie is old school Hollywood. That's what this is. And there is a moment in here after she goes into the party, and she is doing this weird ass goofy walk. And I was like, who is okay with having a friend who walks like this? Dean Martin with Jerry Lewis, that's who. And I was like, oh, she's Jerry Lewis. Like I said, like when I looked at that film director guy from earlier in the film, I was like, this really feels like a wink and nod to Singing in the Rain. There's a moment when she is walking through here with this weird goofy ass walk, and I was like, she's Jerry Lewis. I get it now. I get why she is in this movie. Because all those classic Hollywood films that I just listed off, all of them had that character in there. They all had the goofy, wacky best friend. Like Singing in the Rain had that in there as well. So like, all right, you know what? Even though I am cringing at half the lines she says, I get the role she's fitting in.
Yeah.
Here. And the films that I am, in my mind, treating this as if it's paying homage to, they have that character in there. So I'll give you that. Also, speaking of characters who are cringeworthy, Ken Jeong is in this movie. But I will say, this is probably the best thing Ken Jeong has done in, I don't know, how long did Community go off the air? Yeah, what was his name? I can't remember, but yeah. But yeah, it was one of those things where when he popped up, he pops up and he's got like this big ass pompadour on. He's wearing like an Elvis impersonator style suit. And I looked at him and went, oh God, no. I want no part of this. He's okay. He is okay, and he actually has like 2 or 3 lines in here that actually made me really laugh at him, which is probably the most I've laughed at Kim Jong in any of his films combined up to this point. So yeah, this is a film where even the characters I didn't like had enough in there that was able to get me through. It was able to make me go, all right, you know what, I'll get past this. But again, the stuff in here that works really well, it is the interactions between Nick and Rachel. And I just wish that there were way more of that. And it's a shame because you can point to specific moments in this film and go, you didn't need that, you can cut that part out, get rid of that whole thing right there. There's a character who pops up in here who was this kid that like bullied Nick and his friend when they were kids, but now he's like this rich pompous jerk, but he's there at the weigh as well. And they've got some good jokes with him in there. They've got some enjoyable jokes as well. But you didn't need him. Take him out of there, give more stuff to Nick and Rachel in there. That is the problem with this film. There's way too much going on in it. But there's good stuff in here. But yeah, it's a lot of... It could have been so much better if you had just focused a little bit.
Like too many cooks sort of
It's
deal?
way too many cooks. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on in this. So for me, personally, I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay.
And I kind of feel bad doing that because, like I said, in the first, like, half hour of this thing, I was like, oh, God, this actually is awesome. I was, like, at a 9 when this thing was beginning. And then it kept dropping down. But in the end, I'm still giving it a 7.5. It's still totally worth checking out. If you want a romantic comedy, this is the best one I've seen all year. This is easily a great one to go and check out. If you want, like, a screwball comedy, go and check it out. If you want something that, as I said, feels like a modern day old Hollywood style film, absolutely check this thing out. I totally give it my recommendation, but yeah, there's clear problems in here that I just can't overlook. But like I said, that's coming from me. That is coming from a guy who this movie was not directed at. I'm not the target audience for this. But as I said, I was in the target audience for this thing. That audience loved this. They were losing their minds. After the movie was over, they couldn't stop talking to each other about how great it was. I'd say that audience would probably give this thing a solid 9. Like, I'd say that audience, like, fell head over heels in love with this thing. So yeah, I can absolutely, like, it's one of those movies where, yeah, it's not going to make it into my top 10 at the end of this year. But if somebody had this in their, like, top 5, top 3, I could look at it and go, you know what? I understand. I totally get that. Spoiler corner for anybody who doesn't want to go and see this thing and they still want to know, okay, but what like, happens in the movie? What goes down with this thing? What's that bombshell that you mentioned a moment ago in this thing? The bombshell is that the mom hired a private investigator to look into Rachel's past, and Rachel had always grown up thinking that her dad had died when her mom left. I think she came from China. I don't remember exactly where. But she was basically raised by a single mother because her dad died before she was born. The bombshell is that, nope, your mom was married to someone, then she had an affair, and you're the child of that affair. You can't marry my son because that scandal would wreck my company if this ever got out. Someone else could find this out, and it would just wreck our entire company. That would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to us. And yeah, that was kind of a big moment in there. And then the mom, who I didn't talk much about her mom in here. I talked about Nick's mom, but Rachel's mom, she's only in here for like 2 scenes, but she's great as well. Everyone is great in this movie. She comes in and gives this really heartfelt speech about like what happened, what led to that, why she, had to leave her old husband. And yeah, man, it's like a real tearjerker moment. It is great. But the big final scene of this movie, when Nick actually like proposes to her, it's one of the best proposal scenes I've seen in any movie this year. Not this year, like ever. I haven't seen any other proposal scenes in any movies this year. But yeah, it's fantastic. And it does, like I said, there's a moment in which he has to propose to her at an airport, and he is just doing this like charming clumsiness to him. Not like Hugh Grant, but totally, because Hugh Grant is just clumsy and it's kind of charming. It was Cary Grant in that moment. I was like, God damn, this guy, he is literally just the living embodiment of Cary Grant. And yeah, so this movie, when it is Nick and Rachel, it's incredibly charming. Also, I mentioned that this film is shot incredibly well. This isn't spoiler stuff, but I should have mentioned this a moment ago. I mentioned that this film is shot incredibly well. I was talking about how it just shows off the locations. it also does really unique stuff with how these characters interact. I guess it actually is a good thing that I didn't bring this up because this is an amazing gag in here, and I am glad that I didn't spoil it for people. But this thing, it has Nick at a diner just eating a cake with Rachel, and this lady walks past Nick and takes a photo of herself with Nick, and then she tweets it out, and it's, oh my god, is that Nick Young? Holy cow, that's Nick Young, he's in New York, oh my god, what's going on? Who's that lady that's with him? Who's that lady? Oh, okay, I'm gonna do research. And then just, you see it going around the world, and different people all over the planet just looking into this until someone finds out, oh, I found her on Instagram, her name is Rachel Wu, oh, she's a teacher at NYU. And then the message gets to their mom, it gets to Nick's mom, and Nick is like, I don't know who this lady is. Who is this lady? And then she calls up Nick and is like, oh, so will Rachel be joining us there? She calls her while they are still eating the cake at the diner. I love that gag. That gag was amazing because you see it spreading around. It's like, oh, this took like weeks to happen. It happened in 5 minutes. It got to her. It was an amazing joke, but the way that they shoot it is great. There's little, like, there's the graphics of how it's going all over the place. Like, people, like, walking past other, like, pop-up bubbles going around them. Like, you see people walking over a map, going from one spot to another, showing, like, the message itself going. It's like, man, yeah, they got really creative with this film. I gotta get the director on this, because the director knew what he was doing. It was by John Chu. Yeah, man, he just absolutely nailed this thing. But yeah, so this film, it is a lot of fun. I absolutely recommend checking it out, especially if you want like romantic comedy. If you want something that's just uplifting, it is totally worth watching. But there are enough problems in there that I can understand someone not wanting to pay full price for it or wanting to wait till it comes out on TV. But I use the AMC A-List program, so I didn't have to pay anything for this. But if I had paid to see this, I would be fine with it. I would be totally okay with that, yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. What do we have coming out next week? Next week, we have got, I feel like there is something weird next week. Something kind of, I remember there was something that when I looked at it, I just went, wait, really, that's coming out? Next week is, oh, okay. There's a couple of weird things coming out next week. There's the Happy Time Murders, which I am not looking forward to at all. And then there's AXL. Because for anybody who saw it earlier, we reviewed Alpha, and it's so weird to me that a film about a boy and his dog in the past is going to be followed the very next weekend about a boy and his dog in the future. Seriously, how did you plan that out? But so those will be the 2 movies that we review next week. Come back then, everyone. Bye.
Bye.